Module 5.2, Biblical Reconciliation from a Psychological Perspective. I really like introducing psychology into the Bible, like integrating it, because there's so much information that we can get from it. And God is a master psychologist. Like, he deals with the mind, he's concerned about our emotions. And I feel like how I grew up with the Bible and learning about God, there wasn't enough explanation about the emotions and the mind. So I make it a practice to be able to look at the scriptures and try to draw some relational aspects from it or some mental health aspects from it. So that's what we're going to do in this module. We're going to look at what biblical reconciliation looks like, and just understanding that it is the root and the hallmark of the Bible. God's plan to love us, to provide security, and to offer mercy for us is his reconciliation. He wants to be in relationship with us, and he allows opportunities for us to be in relationship. And we even see it, the reconciliation process, and particular stories in the Bible. So we're going to use a little bit of that time, this time, to talk about the times where we do see reconciliation so that we can identify it. And you can use this for your clients. For those of you who are spiritual, or for those who are spiritual, you can take these stories and apply them to your reconciliation process and know that there are principles, and they're principles that work. And so we don't have to just glean from the world's ideology or other ideologies, but for Bible believers, this particular next two sessions are going to be focused on the biblical applications of reconciliation and what it looks like. And so we're looking at it from the lens of the garden. Initially, we see we see God and Adam and Eve, where there is a trespass, a boundary was broken, and there was a process of reconciliation. We see Jacob and Esau's story. We see Joseph and his brother's story. And then we see the ultimate act of Christ, and we see the prodigal son before Christ, the prodigal son, and the father. So we're going to look at that and do some examination of those stories. Now, with Jacob and Esau, for those of you who are Bible thumpers, I'm just believing that you're all Bible thumpers. The story, I'll just give you a brief synopsis of the story. It was back in time where the birthright meant that you had all the privileges, you would lead the family, you would be wealthy, and it was just a very prestigious position. We don't hold those positions anymore. We just hold the eldest child usually responsible, but in those days, it meant everything. The blessings went to the eldest son, and Jacob and Esau were twins, and their mother, Rebecca, she pitted the boys against each other, like I think we talked about this in Estrangement. And yeah, we did. And so she created a breach between them. They were twins, and she wanted Jacob to receive all the benefits and the privileges, because she did hear a word that the younger shall serve the elder shall serve the younger. And so she took the law into her own hands, and she created a situation where the brothers were estranged, and the father was with the son, and she was with Jacob. And so as they were born, Esau came out first, and then Jacob grabbed his heel catcher. And so that was the onset of their relationship. And eventually Jacob did trick Esau out of his birthright. So there was an estrangement, and there was anger. I would say that more than estrangement, because Esau probably would have killed him. So Jacob ran for his life. Many years went by. Jacob was a man now. He had a family. But Esau called for Jacob. He called for Jacob. And so let him know that he was traveling with his children, and he wanted to see him. So he sent his servants and concubines, and then he sent Leah, the boys, and then he held his beautiful Rachel that he loved last, and to protect them. But so they meet up, and there is forgiveness, there's reconciliation, and there's some things that happened in that reconciliation that coincide with what we talked about in the other module. First of all, he hugged and he kissed him, right? But not even first of all, that's just one of the actions. But the Bible notes that Jacob bowed. Jacob's bowing was servant-like, and it was also an acknowledgement that he was falling under his older brother. And so in a way, that was a sense of him even acknowledging that he should have, he's the servant and his brother is the elder. So that was really big, seeing that he stole his birthright and that he took his position. He lowered himself in that way. And then secondly, what he did was he offered gifts, which was also a sign of peace treaty, or of something that you do at the table. You pay retribution. You acknowledge that you did wrong. So remember we talked about confession and acknowledgement and creating the right environment and accountability and creating a place of safety, that I'm not here to harm you. But he came bearing respect, and he came bearing gifts and acknowledgement of his wrongdoing. Those are the recipes that we talked about that create safety and that create the conversation and facilitate the reconciliation process. Esau didn't want it. He felt like, I have my own stuff, but, it was just a sign of like a peace treaty to say, just take it, so that that I'm not just here to take anymore, but I'm here to give. And the beautiful thing was that Esau was blessed. He had his own stuff. So that kind of helped that he went on with his life. And so you want to encourage people to go on in their life so that when it's time to reconcile, they're not as wounded by what they lost. And you're still wounded, but not as wounded. And we get to see that in that reconciliation process. After that, they fell on each other, they kissed, and which was a sign of unity and being back in fellowship and connection. And oh, how beautiful that is, to be able to fall on each other's neck and to hug and to restore that which was lost. And so they restored the relationship, and they were able to come together. And that's so beautiful. And another element of that, we talk about multi-generational families. Another beautiful element of that is that the family scene. He had his entire family. Like, he didn't just go in private and recreate, this reconciliation process, but they all got information about what does it look like to be reconciled. Hold that thought. What does it look like? Remember, we talked about it's important that our children, that people in families see what it looks like, congregations see what it looks like, our clients see what it looked like, and they had a front row seat to what it looks like. And they would eventually need to see what it looks like, because as the story goes on, we know that Jacob loved Rachel. He had two sons, Joseph and Benjamin, and with Leah they had the other children, which were part of the tribes of Israel. He didn't have the same type of affection, according to the scriptures, that he had for his sons. So there was competition and comparison. He didn't love the mother like he loved Rachel, even though they were sisters, and he was tricked into getting her. So it's obvious that his affection was to Rachel and his children with Rachel. So the boys grew up with, resentment. And so they decided to put him in a pit, and, they were going to kill him. But Judah said, let's not, and let's sell him. And so they sold Joseph, and Joseph went on to just go through various things, but to come out. I said go through. He went through things, but he came out, right? And so he lands in a position of power. And the dream that he had, that he would restore his family and be the leader, the dream that made them all angry and made them hate him more and put him in the pit, actually came to pass. There was a famine. I'm just going over this for someone who may not know the scriptures. And so he was in charge of the harvest and of dispersing the harvest. And so his family members ended up coming to get food and coming down to Egypt to get food. And they didn't recognize Joseph. He was in a position of power. He recognized them, but they didn't recognize him because he had grown up. And so they had no way. He didn't look like he did when they injured him. So he continued to grow and prosper. That's another note. And so in reconciling with them, he didn't immediately reconcile with them. he sent them through a process of examination to see if their hearts had changed, if they were still deceptive, and that if they were still sneaky. And he eventually found out that they had changed, because when he extended the plan for them to bring their little brother, and so that they can go free and they can get help, they broke down and they said, if we bring our brother and something happens to him, it will kill our father. And so that was an acknowledgement that where they were trying to get rid of me because they didn't like me, they're not trying to get rid of my brother, and they're respecting my father. So that's a change in cognition. And then he checked their honesty level to see if they had changed, and put the money in their bags, and they to see if they'd be honest or what. And so he found out that they were even changed in that way. And so they were ready for reconciliation. So remember, we talked about forgiveness. There are steps to forgiveness. There are steps to reconciliation, which is forgiveness. And they proved that they were remorseful. So now they're ready to reconcile. And he acknowledged and showed them that who he was. He hugged, kissed, and he forgave them, and they reconciled. And so that was the example that they seen from their father and their uncle of reconciliation and forgiveness. It played a very significant role in Joseph's ability to replicate the cycle of forgiveness and reconciliation. So even biblically, we see how essential it is for families to see forgiveness and reconciliation so that they can replicate the model. The model was established and they eventually had to live it out. So we never know what our children are going to be exposed to. And if we don't hand them tools to navigate through hurt and forgiveness, then we're going to place them in a position to be in estrangement. So it's important that we remember that. And even being biblical, having a sense of God, it doesn't mean that you get to negate the process of forgiveness and reconciliation. And sometimes when you are a believer, you go into easy forgivism, I call it. And you just forgive. You forgive because Christ forgave you. So you say, and you just think you're supposed to forgive, and you think that forgiveness means reconciliation. You don't allow repentance. You don't allow acknowledgement of the offense. You just go right into, because you want to be a strong, good Christian, into the relationship, forgiveness, and you're back in the relationship. There's usually no conversation. There's usually no acknowledgement. There's usually not a plan to keep each other safe. You just keep rolling until the events cascade, and then you have another blow up.